The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say I'm reawakening mine. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say I'm reawakening mine. Happy Holy Day, Moors. Welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for the exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and more science. An awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, I am pleased to present to you our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, along with yours truly, as together we present At the Edge of a Sword, Dogma, Unam Sanctum, Doctrine of Discovery, still in force. But before we begin, please be sure to like, share, and if you have not already done so, please subscribe to our channel. Here we are. Let's receive Grand Sheik.
And Dr. G.
Hey y'all, Islam? How are you?
Shalom.
We are.
Assalamu alaikum. Wadi maikum.
We are working together today.
Yes.
I am not behind. I'm not off camera today.
Yeah.
And we are so happy to make this presentation together. For me, Grand Sheik, it's important because I just know that there are so many folks that are misled, and when it comes to where the various religions come from, particularly the ones that the main three, when we see Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, Buddhism. Yeah, but those three, there's a whole bunch of them, but we know that there was something that happened, all the years and stuff when things actually happen. And I, for myself, know my experience of carrying on what we're going to talk about until I had my awakening.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about the doctrine of discovery, dogma, and the what's behind it. I guess we'd say the driving force behind it.
Yes, the driving force. Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that like we talked about the last time, I think what creates a lot of the confusion is because after the popes of Rome, like pretty much took over Roma. Rome and Roma is two different things.
Oh, explain, please.
Roma is actually the fundamental priesthood, actually, of Asia and Africa, or what you call the Naga, and dealing with the metaphysical and principled laws of nature, dealing with cosmology and what you call the Hermetic laws, etc. And what is not told so much in history is actually even during Napoleon's time, and we're talking more recent, with Napoleon's time, that they actually kidnapped and held in prison the one of your major priests in the ancient world, and to get from him, to extract out of him the principles of alchemy, etc. And so most people don't know. Like they'll talk about it, but they'll talk about it in what you would call the race terms that they were trained in under animal husbandry, when that whole paradigm is false. the Asiatic Africans, who were actually the foundation of the actually priesthood first. And this is why you will hear them talk or mention every once in a while. They'll put it in their dogma terms, the black popes, original black popes, and then give you limited information on it. And this is where they converted the priesthood into the dark, or what you call dark Babylonian magic, in order for the purpose of conquering the world. And that's when it became the Romanic, or what you call the Roman popes of Rome, that they don't make that connection in history because they don't want the people to know that the fundamental principles of what they call religion actually have Asiatic African roots, and so they take credit for that, and they take over. And of course, you have what they call the burning of the books of Luxor and Alexandria, and this is the keys to their power base even to this very day. And where you'll hear those who are scholars and do research, and they find the admission to over 500 years, though it's greater than that, where you see the Catholic popes of Rome admit that they set the world back over 500 years by virtue of the information that they held back and that they preserved for themselves. So people most when they look at history and they talk about the quote unquote great Christian book burnings, their mind always goes to their concept of Christianity, not knowing that the book burners were actually Constantinians claiming Christianity. If you get the whole point, the whole foundation of even what they call the Christian era is even colored. So the people, when they look at Christianity, then they look at the ancient Sabian or Sabian Moors, or the Coptic, or what they call or what they refer to even the Falasha, um, and Bantu tribes of Moors, the Berber tribes, etc., which is a collective of tribes of what you call the Red Sea people,
Mhm.
Eritrea, Hiccupta, that they call Egypt, um, Algeria, Tunis, all of this, are the real, what they call Saba or Sabians and descendants. And they will rewrite it in history as the Jews, etc. But people need to understand that that whole paradigm is actually a cover up of Saba, or Saba, which includes the people, the culture, etc., and is rewritten in history as the Jews, if you get the point.
Now, and isn't it so that that the first so-called Christian church was actually the Coptic?
Coptic is Jew.
The Coptic. Oh,
That's
okay.
the cover up. See, this is what people need to understand.
Ethiopia.
Yes, all of it.
Okay.
Egypt, Nubia, Sudan, etc. No different than most people when they're looking at what they, as is presented by the reconstructors, they'll talk about Egypt, Egypt, Egypt. See, but they don't talk that Nubia and Sudan is the foundation of what they call Egypt.
So
So
when
all your, go ahead,
when the council of then there were other,
Nicaea,
yeah, when the council of Nicaea convened, and there were other
325.
325 AD, but there were other councils to that. They were bringing the ones that refused to go along with, large by and large, would they have been our melanated priests, the Coptic priests?
Those were,
the one.
yes, they were killing off the originals. And this is why, like when you go into the Nicene Council, 325, and then they had a few other later councils.
Right.
They were actually not just councils; they were wars.
Okay. Okay.
This is where they were altering history. No different. The same pattern that they did then with Carthage, Queen Dodo, etc., King of Tyre, etc.
Hmm.
That whole foundation area is where they were really taking over. Hannibal and Hasdrubal, those wars, the Punic Wars. So when they're talking about the Punic is another word for Phoenician.
Okay.
Those wars against the Phoenicians, which is us.
And even back then,
Yes.
even if you look at the Bible, you
Mhm.
will see where you just mentioned the king of Tyre,
Mhm.
and others, and we know that we were given a narrative that vilified
Yes.
these people. They were vilified,
Mhm.
and almost anything that had an "ite" on
Mhm.
the end of it
Yes.
was a negative also. So was this a part of, I would call it an ancient disinformation campaign, because
Yeah,
they do that today.
it's not new,
Yeah.
but the same pattern is used even up to the takeover of the Maghreb. So the takeover of the Maghreb, then they talk about the curse of Ham to justify what they're doing to the Aboriginals here in the West. And then of course they create the Nam de Gear Black and all that stuff to cover up that the Hamatites, Moabites, etc., that they conquered in the West, and it's over hundreds of years. It didn't even take place like people think, like with the War of Battle of Tours. As a matter of Poitiers, France, 732, Battle of Tours near Poitiers, France. This is where they're taking over Nefertiti's daughters' uh, territories. And this is why, like, when people are looking at those old wars and they keep thinking just north Kemet, or what they would call that area, Africa, they're not thinking Iberia, which is the whole strip of the islands that they call Europe. And even the 8 mile bridge between the peninsula and Africa, etc. It's only 8 mile bridge, and even the destructions of the bridge, I think it was a couple, but at least one major bridge, and they want to hide the technology. They want to hide the fact that what they call Europe today is Iberia, or when they talk about uh, Spain, they don't tell the people that Spain is Al Andalus, you know, or an Al Andalusia, so to hide the history, because then you have the Moorish history. And then Poland, Germany, etc., they want people to think that even German, the Germanic languages, are hybrid Europeans, and that linguistic form come from Central Africa, and so a lot of history, even uh, Welsh, what the area that they call Welsh, England, etc., even the bagpipes and all that stuff with the Irish, they think that is hybrid Europeans that come from Central Africa. So in order to disconnect the people from both the land, even here today, um, it was necessary for them to burn the books to make the disconnect there, as well as prepare what they call the New World. And their New World, and you notice that when they talk about the New World, they talk about 1492. And this is where people need to keep in mind. You keep in mind to keep their concepts kind of more clear. On January the 1st, 1492, is when Boabdil ceded the Alhambra so that the Constantinians wouldn't burn it down.
And when you say ceded, surrendered.
Yes.
Okay.
And of course, even to the day, the Alhambra is presented as one of the 7 wonders of the world, and is still used to this very day, with the architecture and a lot of the buildings and a lot of the stonework and detailing is solid today, as if some of the areas were built, even in recent years. That's how sound the architecture is. Um, and most this is one of the other things that they've done. This is why even when they're teaching people of that era and them taking over and then claiming, because remember, this whole thing is to what they would call drawing a line. In other words, what they would do, what they don't destroy, they would draw a line and then lay claim to it. So the culture, the 7 liberal arts, the culture, a lot of the inventions, everything, they would put their names on it and then give it a contemporary date and say that they invented these things or that they constructed these things and they didn't. Same pattern they brought to the Maghreb. And so the issues that they brought to the Maghreb are patterned after the doctrine of discovery. This is why even when you see a lot of law cases where a lot of the Moorish tribes here, even in this area, if you do some research with the Nanakokis, in this area where they were taking over with the Lord Delaware and them taking over this area, right? You'll see a lot of the cases where the Aboriginals here had claims in court, and they used the doctrine of discovery to supersede treaty and constitution to steal the land. And this is why the doctrine of discovery is so important. And many people today, when they're talking about the social and political problems of the Aboriginal people here, this is why they're usually directed to always argue race and civil rights, which is a total distraction when the operations is the doctrine of discovery. This is also why when Pope Francis, when the world start putting pressure on them via different nations stop buying or trading with the U.S. Treasury bonds, which were used to fund their operations, Virginia Company, United States Trading Company, etc. Because remember, the rest of the world knows they're dealing with a trading company operations that's operated from Davos, Switzerland, called the United States. The people here have been actually protected from that information. This is why it's been so important for them to control the narrative so that the people here would start thinking that the United States is the land and that the people are United Statesians. And, well, yeah. Well, they won't say that like that.
Right.
But no different than, like, if you're looking at the political jurisdictions, right? If you're looking at Mexico, right? They'll say Mexico. They don't say Mexicans, Americans like that. Mm-hmm. They even try to avoid calling them Americans so they could justify having stolen a lot of that land, even with the issue of what they're called immigration today, right? Mm-hmm. You see most people think that when Mexicans are in Khalifa's land, in Nevada, in New Mexico, Texas, the people here who don't know the history act like they're foreigners on this land, and they are actually the people of the land with us, if you get the point.
Right.
And this is another reason why they're having problems with that border issue. Mm-hmm. Because also on another point of interest, because since the world, like Russia, China, India, South Africa, Brazil, and other Phoenicia tribes from the north to the south stopped trading with the U.S. Treasury bond, which is based on 1862 on us. That's what funded them. Now, keep in mind, January the 1st, 1492, Boabdil ceded the Alhambra so that they wouldn't burn it down. And also, they made an agreement that they would allow many of the women and children to leave and not be killed in the war.
That was a lie, was it?
That ended up being what you call April Fool's Day.
That was the massacre.
That's the massacre when they burnt the ships that they had women and children on in April. But January the 1st, 1492 is when Boabdil ceded. So they adjusted the calendars and they changed the timeline. And this is why when you look at the treaties and then you look at the calendar dates, they don't align. Just like when you look at Treaty of Peace and Friendship, when you look at when John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, when they were acting as ministers plenipotentiary in the north at the Maghreb, dealing with the treaties, and also with the ordinance of 1787 deciding how they're going to govern here. This is why you see that sequence of time: 1786, 1787 Treaty of Peace and Friendship, 1787, 1788 Ordinance of 1788 forming the government, then 1788, 1789 United States Constitution adopted from Muslim law.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So since the United States was supposed to, like, it was basically an agreement of commerce, trade and commerce. So the people that were indigenous to the land at the outset of this so-called the treaty were supposed to still have their autonomy and all of that.
This is why you have Article 3, Section 2. Okay. This is where your diversity issue comes in. Now, a lot of times when we're talking, even when when people who know a little bit about it, a lot of people don't. When Drali and representatives from England, etc., and other European nations and American states, Organization of American States, met at Havana, Cuba, where the Queen ceded or gave mandate to Drali because the right of claim, right? And even when you're dealing with that, you'll notice that you don't hear scholars and historians talking about that, but yet it's known, it's in the record. It's in the congressional record. So you're talking about the honor of the treaties, which is Constitution. So when you're looking at Article 6 of the Constitution for the United States as an example, it would say all debts and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be binding against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. And all treaties made or which shall be made in pursuance thereof shall be the supreme law of the land. Now, when you look at that, you understand why it was important from a political perspective, right, for them to promote the nom de guerre systems of what they call branding, to brand our people Indian, black, colored, and all these different things in order to get us off the square of the treaties and their obligations, because the intent was they were imposing in the background, subtly, little by little, the doctrine of discovery. Now, they'll call it in history, Columbus discovered America. What they're really talking about is doctrine of discovery.
Now, allegedly, he discovered America in 1492, but the doctrine of discovery supposedly came into effect in 1493.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah, so that...
Now, that's why I say pay attention to the timeline.
Okay, yeah.
Because it was a military operation. Now, you notice that when they talk about Columbus, they'll say, what? Queen Isabella.
And King Ferdinand.
Right. We're talking about Aragon and Castile. Right? So you're talking about Aragon and Castile. So now you're talking about them taking over Al-Andalus. So when Al-Andalus fell out of the hands of the Moors into the Germanic tribes of hybrid Europeans, they'll write it in history as Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand merged their kingdoms and warred against the Moors, and were able after that to come into the Western Hemisphere. People don't think, why would they need to have defeated the Moors in order to come into the West? Because this is the Maghreb, you see. Now, so this is where you have the date set January the 1st as the fiscal year of Roman conquest. So they'll say January the 1st is the new year of the new world. That's when they altered the calendars. This is why, like when you'll see as an example, even when they celebrate where they met at Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia, right? Mm-hmm. They'll have the Mummers Parade celebration January the 1st. That's why it's January the 1st. Because that's when the Alhambra fell. That's when the pendulum swing actually took place, even though it's over a period of years. And then the Batam Ram on Lake Michigan. So the Batam Ram was the last of the Moorish navies. The Batam Ram. So a lot of this history is known by scholars, but it's not told in your regular history books. But it's not unknown. And this is where you get the symbolism of when they talk about George Washington chopping down the cherry tree. The cherry tree is the nickname for the Moorish flag, the red flag with the five-pointed green star. It's called the cherry tree. That's the nickname. So when you understand some of the history, and also when you look at a lot of the deletions in the congressional record, house records, etc. During that period of time, this is where they were altering the history or reconstructing, and when they call reconstruction,
And I mean, and
and
they literally call it
yeah,
reconstruction, but
we think it's buildings
right, and
as if
but in a sense it is, because that was involved in
yes,
that process, but it was really reconstructing, or
history.
like I said again, I give his story to them, so they were really constructing his story. They
Yes,
were that because his story became the interjection
interjection.
in that now has altered the timelines and so
Yes.
forth, so-called timelines and so forth. But from
So
a
now you see 1493. Now you read that. Now the doctrine of discovery was used to do what? To start making claims on the land.
right.
You see?
And the reason why, one of the reasons why we're going over this is like in March, at the end of March, it was announced that the Vatican has repudiated, they say, the doctrine of discovery.
Even when they did the motu proprio that we've talked about for years, Dr. G,
Right.
when we say when Pope Francis did the motu proprio in 2013, because they
Hmm.
went bankrupt again.
Okay.
Because this is after the debacle of the 207 208 crash,
Yeah,
and
the
it,
housing crash.
and they had to refund it. And of course, that forced, from a political point, that forced them to make the pact on the doctrine of discovery to continue what they would call endless wars in Africa and Asia. This is where your endless wars come from.
But finally, it looks like Africa standing up against them.
Finally, but
Finally,
remember, at that side of Kemet was already defeated. See, because remember, after 1492, that's when they were able to go into not just the West, but also into Africa. And this is where you have the dividing of the different African nations under what you call Britain, Spain, and Portugal. You know, and Germany went in there, and this is where you see Hitler and them going in there. Mussolini, all those wars were in Africa.
mhm.
And people keep looking at it. Oh, those wars were in Europe. No, they were in North Africa.
Oh,
There were proxy wars, the same way the U.S. corporation uses proxy wars to cover up the fact that they're actually running the war. No different than what they're doing presently in Ukraine,
right, right.
if you get the point. No different than them going into Libya, killing Gaddafi to steal the gold to give Germany back their gold that they stole here when they took them buildings down, and then they claimed that Muslims blew them buildings up when it was really them. Germany had, do some research, search y'all. Germany had sent representatives to New York for the return of their gold. The next couple of days, the buildings fell. Half the gold disappeared.
Prior to that,
Yes.
yeah,
The so-called people doing security wiring in those buildings is traced to Bush family contractors.
right, and they were
That these,
setting it up for controlled demolition.
we already, anybody that knows construction knows that that was controlled demolition.
Mm,
But we're not even going into that.
right,
The real deal is our people need to comprehend here that they've been operating for decades under the controlled narrative of racism and civil rights argument. Of course, the civil rights issue is 14th Amendment straw man article that most don't understand that. We had some of that conversation, but they don't understand why there's no successes there. That's the straw man issue of 14th Amendment, which is invalid law, right? It was never ratified because it's unconstitutional, factually. That's why you see them always every so many years, even during the period when they when Hoover was castigating Martin Luther King, preparing him for sacrifice, and told him he had about 34 days, meaning to neutralize himself. That's what the signification was. But the deal of it is that the people need to comprehend that what they have been trained under animal husbandry for decades to keep arguing civil rights, 14th Amendment straw man, and racism and skin color was a total diversion so that they would not argue doctrine of discovery, which was really the operative military nonstop
because that hasn't ended.
Extension of both the Battle of Tours, far back as 732, right? And what they refer to as the Christian Crusades, which is really the Constantinian Wars. And so people, in order to really kind of comprehend the political, historical operations and agendas of North America and the Western Hemisphere, they need to know the Punic Wars, on up to the battles of Tours near Poitiers, France, 732, on up to the Battle Lake Michigan, 1812.
That would be here.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of it is connected.
Okay.
And our people don't know that these are sequences of the same war that never ended. But at all times, the operative military operation in the background is the doctrine of discovery.
Can I share? Should we share a little bit
Yes.
an excerpt from?
Yes.
And so I'm going to share this bit of an excerpt. I could pull it up, but I think it's going to be so small they won't be able to see
but just go ahead. It'd be better for you to read. But make the references for those of you who come here. We always tell you to take notes.
Right.
And all of you go through the doctrine of discovery, not just Unam Sanctum, but the doctrine of discovery, so that you can get a background, because you already know that we can't go through all of those documents in our couple of hour, sessions that we have.
Right.
It's not practical. Only when we're having, classes at the building, where we can
next
go
week.
into what's called yes.
We're doing next Friday, y'all. Y'all want to come live. But
Yes.
this is an excerpt of the doctrine of discovery. And I'm not sure where I'm starting, but I'm going to start right here because that's where the excerpt is. It says, "Wherefore, as becomes Catholic kings and princes, after earnest consideration of all matters, especially of the rise and spread of the Catholic faith, as was the fashion of your ancestors, kings of renowned memory, you have purposed with the favor of divine clemency to bring under your sway, the said mainlands and islands with their residents and inhabitants, to bring them to the Catholic faith. Hence, heartily commending in the Lord this your holy and praiseworthy purpose, and desirous that it be duly accomplished, and that the name of our Savior be carried into those regions, we exhort you very earnestly in the Lord, and by your reception of holy baptism, whereby you are bound to our apostolic commands, and by the vows of the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ, enjoy strictly that inasmuch as with eager zeal for the true faith you design to equip and dispatch this expedition." So they were sending them out. You purpose also, as is your duty, to lead the peoples dwelling in those lands and countries to embrace the Christian religion, nor at any time let dangers or hardships deter you therefrom, with the stout hope and trust in your hearts that Almighty God will further your undertakings. And in order that you may enter upon so great an undertaking with great readiness and heartiness endowed with benefit of our apostolic favor, we of our own accord, not at your instance, nor the request of anyone else in your regard, but out of our own soul, largest and certain knowledge, and out of the fullness of our apostolic power, they keep talking about this, by the authority of Almighty God conferred upon us in blessed I guess, Peter of the vicarship of Jesus Christ. When they say they're a vicar of Christ, that means that they're a substitute, right? Which we hold on earth, do by tenor of these presents, should any of said islands have been found by your envoys and captains, give, grant, and assign to you and your heirs and successors, kings of Castile and Leon, forever, together with all their dominions, cities, camps, places, and villages, and all rights, jurisdictions, and appurtenances, all islands and mainlands found and to be found, discovered and to be discovered, toward the west and south, by drawing and establishing a line from the Arctic pole, namely the south, no matter whether the said mainlands and islands are found and to be found in the direction of India or towards any other quarter, the said line to be distant 100 leagues towards the west and south from any of the islands commonly known as the Azores and Cape Verde. With this proviso, however, that none of the islands and mainlands found and to be found, discovered and to be discovered beyond that said line towards the west and south be in the actual possession of any Christian king or prince up to the birthday of our Lord Jesus Christ, just past, from which the present year 1493 begins. Mm-hmm. It says, and we're almost finished. And we make a point and depute you and your said heirs and successors, lords of them, in full and free power, authority, and jurisdiction of every kind, with this proviso, however, that by this our gift, grant, and assignment, no right acquired by any Christian prince who may be in actual possession of said islands and mainlands prior to the said birthday of our Lord Jesus Christ is hereby to be understood to be withdrawn or taken away. Moreover, we command you in the virtue of holy obedience that employing all due diligence in the premises as you also promised, nor do we doubt your compliance therein in accordance with your loyalty and royal greatness of spirit. You should appoint to be to the aforesaid mainlands and islands worthy, God-fearing, learned, skilled, and experienced men in order to instruct the aforesaid inhabitants and residents in the Catholic faith and train them in good morals. Furthermore, under penalty of excommunication, which they call late sententi, to be incurred ipso facto, should anyone thus contravene, we strictly forbid all persons of whatsoever rank, even imperial and royal, or whatsoever estate, degree, order, or condition, to dare without your special permit or that of your aforesaid heirs and successors to go for the purpose of trade or any other reason to the islands or mainlands found and to be found, discovered and to be discovered towards the west and south by drawing and establishing that line. So I'm gonna I'm almost
now
finished.
You wait.
Line from the Arctic pole to the Antarctic pole, no matter whether the mainlands and islands found and to be found lie in the direction of India or toward any other quarter whatsoever, which they set up here. The said line to be distant 100 leagues towards the west south, as is aforesaid, from any of the islands commonly known as the Azores and Cape Verde, apostolic constitutions and ordinances and other decrees whatsoever to the contrary notwithstanding. We trust in him from whom empires and governments and all good things proceed, that you, should you, with the Lord's guidance, pursue this holy and praiseworthy undertaking, in a short while your hardships and endeavors will attain with most felicitous result to the happiness and glory of all Christians. And that excerpt is what part of what justified them.
That's where the hybrid Europeans that operate in the Western Hemisphere and around the world. That's where the foundation of the hegemony has its root, that our people keep calling, race prejudice. No, it's a hegemony operation under the Jesuit order, which is really a military operation. The people keep thinking, when they're saying Jesus, or the order of Jesus, Jesuits, the people are trained that these are priests, worshiping Jesus, etc. No, they conquered Jesus, and they're conquering the bloodline. So they're saying everything that is discovered or yet to be discovered comes under that claim. Now, by the people, as they're reading history today, thinking that the Pope and the Jesuit orders and the bishopric are Christians in association with Jesus. They don't know that they're Constantinians claiming to be Christians. This is why even to today, where people are getting degrees in the name of Christianity, the official name is Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed. It's Constantine. This is why the priest will never mention the official name of their version of Christianity in the buildings, churches, and buildings here, particularly in the Western Hemisphere. They will always say Christian when actually they're Constantinians. And this is part of the reconstruction of history. See, so they use Jesus as a front as a moral claim for their activity.
Mm-hmm.
But then what do you see? A trail of genocide everywhere they went.
And so what's important to note, that how many of us have, and some of you have embraced Christianity as if it was something in our when I say, I don't want to say in our DNA from the beginning of our inception, which is not the truth. And that's why we're calling this at the edge of a sword, because our ancestors, many of our ancestors, not that they did not believe their own spiritual religious practices, but when it comes to whether or not you believe or you're going to die,
the Constantinian version.
Yeah,
we got to put things in perspective.
They had a sword. Yeah. Even on the when you look at, they call the cross and the sword,
because everything they were doing was contrary to anything in the name of Yeshua or Jesus.
Absolutely.
See, in other words, their actions were opposite.
Right.
But their claim was always projected as positive.
Well, they murdered people.
In other words, they say Jesus while they're cutting children in half. They say Jesus while they were using vagina pairs to steal the estates of women. This is why, like, even today, when these people are talking about the altars and everything, you don't see them talking about the vagina pairs, right? Which was as a matter of fact,
barbarous torture.
That was not they literally made them in like jewelry. Without stones, but they literally made them like fancy metal engraved like a piece of art. They were vagina pairs.
Explain.
Vagina pairs is like a tool, and if you can look it up and put it so people can see it. So look at this. This is a tool, looks like a pear, and it had like a screw based on it. And this is why you see so many cities in North America that they call Salam. They'll say Salem.
Mm-hmm.
So the witches was Salem was where they was killing indigenous women to steal the estates, and they divided between the local rulers, the local lord rulers, and the church. See how beautifully made.
So let me share. They call them the pairs of. Let me try. Let me see if I can share this. Let me share.
And remember, this doctrine of discovery.
They actually call them the pair of anguish. So here you are. I don't know if I can make it any bigger. I don't know. me see the pic. What are we seeing? Okay. Let me see. You can't read that.
And you know what? Like our people.
This is called the Pair of Anguish. I don't think I can make it any bigger. But anyway, this is what and it's in the modern day, like it's almost like the speculum, ladies. Y'all know when you go for your gynecological visit, and this
those are designed to rupture the uterus.
Pair, the pair of anguish, also known as the choke pair or mouth pair, is a torture device based on mechanisms of unknown use from the early modern period.
They know what it is.
And it consists of a pear-shaped metal body divided into spoon-like segments that can be spread apart with a spring or by turning a key.
Yes.
Its proposed functionality as a torture device is to be variously inserted into the mouth, the rectum, or vagina, and then expanded to gag or mutilate the victim. And so they would do that.
They would do that to what they call the witches of Salem. Right. And today they'll call it witches of Salem.
Yeah, so
of course, that was the Aboriginal women of the land, because remember, it's a matriarchy. So the general wealth, was maintained, through the matriarchy. And so this is why, even though they don't talk about it in detail, they always talk about the abuse, but they never say detail what it was. While they refer to loosely, and it's a misnomer, they'll say the black woman was the most abused woman in the world, but they don't tell you that those pairs were made for her. That's what they made them for, the witches of Salem. And that's how most of the churches here got their wealth. Now, isn't it interesting that when you really study the history and the culture, all the moral things that they use as a front to justify entering other people's lands are exactly the moral things that they don't practice and never did. No different than you'll see them take their oath on the Constitution for the United States, and everything they do is opposite to it. But they use that as a moral, to make the claim of the moral high ground. And people don't pay attention that everything that they claim, their operations are the opposite. They adopt Yeshua, but they'll never say Yeshua. They never say it. They'll say Jesus. Right? And everything that he stood for, including his pedigree, they go against, including anyone with the woolly hair. That which Sufi means those with the woolly hair. That's what that means.
Oh, really? With woolly hair?
If you hear the word Sufi, when they say Sufi, that means the wise men with the woolly hair. That's what that means, right? It's not a philosophy itself. It's a term implying those with the woolly hair.
Why do they say Sufism though?
Because that means their philosophy.
Okay.
Or so if you talk about Sufism, then you would be talking about the Essene, Gnostic philosophies, the Essenes, the Nazarites, stuff like that. All these were different, what you call Sufi sects, or people with the woolly hair. So you know that they're Moabite Canaanites, the original ones. So they were people with hair like lamb's wool, skin like burnished brass. That's why you see when they talk about the Al-Maraccans of the Maghreb, they'll say the copper color complexion people. Mm-hmm. Same thing.
So I wanted to also share, again, like I said, there are so many people that believe you cannot, you can't make me doubt them. I know too much about them when it comes to their faith and their religion.
They say that, but they don't know.
And they really don't know what they don't know. And if you come to them with an alternative to
documented,
it's not even accepted. It's of the devil. It's of
now. This is now. Listen to your presentment at the moment.
Okay.
At the moment, let's examine it. Here you have people, right? That, because remember, this is learned. Part of it is for some it's intentional, others it's learned. Okay. Right? Like they'll talk about his grandmother, Ruth, and stuff like that, right? And if you tell them that he was Moor too, then they'll deny that. And they'll say that he was a pale skin. They'll have him pale skin like Michelangelo's nephew type look. Um, you get the idea. Knowing that he was from the area, that he was African, actually, if you get the point. And then deny it, and then the whole idea of them saying separating Egypt from Africa, what they are meaning is that they're mentally cutting the head off. It's a mental operation, if you get the point. So people look at that as physical, as if you could lift the land up and take it somewhere. And the real deal. So when you're looking at what they would call Hikupta or Egypt, in modern times, the people would be looking at the political borders that they see today on the maps. When you're talking Egypt in the ancient world, you're talking almost all of Africa on that side, Kemet, even into the Western Hemisphere, which would include the Maghreb, which is Morocco, the most extreme west, which would include North, Central, South America. This is why when you see them go into what you would call, the Masonic history, etc., you'll see absolute direct correlations, and you'll see the regalia that they use in all their rituals and their coronations, etc., that are identical to ancient Eritrea and Abyssinia, that they will call today Ethiopia, etc., which is actually of Nubian origin. You understand? And
Mm-hmm.
all of your main pharaohs of Hikupter are Nubians. But they'll write it in history as that they were black, because that's the code system that they use in the modern day. Because remember, that code system was used later. But that's not there. That's not persistent then, if you get the point. And this is again where our people have difficulties because they don't know, they don't recognize timeline, and they'll take the branding the gear system and take it retroactive in history and call the Nubians, Sudanese, Eritreans, and Egyptians black, which is a code system for caste that's contemporary. If you get the whole point. But the deal of it is, it's not unknown, but the point of it is that people are not aware that the doctrine of discovery is an inculcation or an institutionalization of the hegemony operations.
Explain hegemony for those who may not know.
Hegemony is what our people. It is where the hybrid Europeans, as you read the doctrine of discovery,
Mm-hmm.
that attitude of superior claim, superiority, or what you call taking over the Aryan priesthood's rights. Because remember, the Aryans are really originate with us. That's really a priesthood. Aryan is dealing with Aries,
Because when we hear,
constellation Aries.
but when we hear about the Aryan race,
Because it ain't no such thing. You see, this is now. You notice now. All right, let's look at this. Remember the principle. One of the keys that the hybrids have always used. They introduce connotative linguistics in order to control narratives. This is why you'll see them saying Jew is a race in one sentence and Jew is religion in another sentence. So they can create that false narrative to justify non-Canaanite people claiming to be Canaanite.
mm-hmm.
For the narrative to imply that they're the people of the land. Then they'll use the religion as an idea that they're God's people.
chosen.
Yeah, all of it's a fraud. The whole paradigm is a fraud. But it lives with the people because they don't know the difference between philosophy, just like the people don't even know that when you see one of the agendas of the council, the Nicene Council, right? They say to deal with what? Arianism.
Wow.
It's what? What is Arianism? It's the Coptic philosophy of astrology. It's a counter move. What does the constellations of the heavens begin with in the study of the universe? Aries.
Oh my. See?
So the original priesthood of Roma were Aryans. They were Asiatics.
And so what Rome wanted to do was to get rid of that Gnostic knowledge
and introduced or imposed an anthropomorphic
/ dependent
really
bloodletting
or blood, always blood and sacrifice, see, of the dark Babylonian, some among the Dravidians or the Druids would sacrifice children. That's their ritual. And this is where you get the ritual of the sacrifice on altars, where they take the blood and the body, and they would eat the hearts, or they would do the rituals, eat the hearts and drink the blood. That carries to this very day, and most people don't know it.
Communion.
That's what it's not like the signals aren't there. Is that the people have been trained to think it was some kind of really holy roly goody thing. And they would always say, oh, the blood of Christ is upon me. Stuff like that. In other words, they were one of the ones who sacrificed them. Even when they stuck the sword in this to see if fluid would come out, that's what they do. And it's interesting how even when the priesthood delivered Yeshua to Pontius Pilate, right? What did he say? He says, "Man,
he hadn't done anything."
He said, "But if y'all want
to, my hands are clean.
Y'all want to sacrifice him, and he goes
wash my hands of it. Yeah,
it's on y'all."
He said, "I find no fault in it."
Exactly. And who did it? It was the priesthood.
Which when you look at it that way, though, the very ones that we've come to
worship and look for Jesus were the ones who sacrificed.
Were the ones that actually did it, which is sort of.
And who gets blamed? The mystical devil.
Right.
Who did it? The priesthood. Who gets blamed? The mystical devil. Who did it? The priesthood. Who gets blamed? Mystical devil. Who been pumping Jesus around the world, knowing that's not his name, it's a password? The priesthood. Who been collecting finance behind it? The priesthood. Who's gained multiple compound wealth behind it? The priesthood. Who gets $60 million planes at the expense of the widow's pennies?
The priesthood.
Whose name do they use to do it in? Jesus. Where do they go? To and fro the earth.
Seeking whom they may devour.
Exactly.
Which is the doctrine of discovery.
There you go. And they say they discovered your stuff and they have right to it. And then they have what is called what? A 10% tax to the Pope.
The tithe.
And that's called what? Tithe. Look up the word tithe. Look up the history.
But check this out.
And it means 10% Roman tax.
Check this out, though. So the tithe, I started looking at the tithe as just like this. It's no different than the mafia coming into town and saying, listen, if you're going to have to pay me XYZ, in this case, 10% of your earnings, and we're going to protect you, because the Bible says that we're to bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there be meat, food to eat in your house. Mm-hmm. Prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour you out blessings that you won't have room enough to receive it. And it says, and I will, here it is, rebuke the devourer for your sake. So unless you pay me this money, this tithe, mm-hmm. which is like mafia, then I can't tell you what might happen to
that you. Practice,
it's protection money.
That practice was adopted by what's later called
But that
mafia.
is a psychological attack on the people.
Not psychological, it's war attack.
Well, it's a war.
Literally, because remember, it wasn't just mental. They torture people.
Yeah, well, in earlier days, but today what it is it's touring on.
No. Let's do the research.
Okay.
Now, I had an old book. I think it was 1800s in that area that I actually loaned to Abdullah. I didn't get it back yet. And this is where they literally used to take Moors and women and use a spoon and take their eyes out to torture them to get them to turn over their Bonnevilles.
Those like what we call plantations or farms?
Yeah, Bonnevilles became plantations.
Plantations, and okay.
Many plantations in the Western Hemisphere that people call plantations were first Bonnevilles. This is where you get like one of our chiefs of the North of the Unhonesty Confederation was named Chief Pontiac. This is where General Motors used Chief Pontiac, and one of their model names they made a car called Pontiac, and one of the models was called Bonneville. That's what that relationship is. See, so, and they'll have, like, when they talk about many of the Shakuns here, so a lot of people call them chief, they were Shakun. So Shakun in the West is what Shika or Sheik was in the East. Or Shakun, they didn't really call them chief, they were Shakun here. So Shakun Pontiac, he was one of the Shakuns whose Bonneville they stole.
They stole his land.
Same thing when you start going from all the way down the Mississippi. They used to call it Mississippi. It was actually with a Z. They call it today with an S. But it was actually Mississippi. All right, with a Z. All right. Which was dug by ancient pharaohs for trade. That wasn't a natural river coming from the lakes to the Gulf, and along that we made our mounds and stuff like that. This is why, like in St. Louis area and stuff, where they murdered a lot of people. You know, they'll suppress. It's a lot of history there that they suppress. You know, so a lot of the reconstruction. And you notice that most of when you hear about lynchings and tortures, you'll hear a lot of that history along the Mississippi when they was taking over the trading routes.
What about Niagara Falls?
When you look at Niagara Falls, right? This is where a lot of the Aboriginal women used to meet, and they used to do their what you call their prayers, you know, and their rituals, etc. There. At the waters, at the atomic waters. So the atomic waters, because those lakes, all those lakes weren't natural. Some of them were made with atomic technology in order to feed the Western Hemisphere. That's why they always have a mist over them. If you go anywhere around the world, you go to them Great Lakes, you will see they always have a mist over them. Always. Now, they used to have their meetings there, and they slaughtered. They had a rebellion. They had a rebellion in that whole area, which many of the Anansi tribes who were rebelling against the hybrid Europeans taking over and killing off a lot of the Shakuns, etc. And so they massacred a lot of the people, and they would throw many of the matriarchs over the falls, and then they call it Nigger Falls. You know, and of course it becomes Niagara Falls. And in around early 1900s, the late 1800s, early 1900s, around 1902, between 1902 and 1909, they took over the meetings and start controlling it with some other people who were claiming to be us. This is where you get...
Is that the Niagara movement?
Yes. The Niagara movement was a rebellion. And that's when they started the
NAACP.
The
NAACP.
Yes. And this is when they imposed the colored brand, calling these people artificial people. And actually, people who claim to be the J word actually own that organization.
That they can't. They're not even allowed to own property.
This is why it's in their charter. They can't.
It's just folks like, I'm a card carrying member of the A, and that's why they haven't done anything for us.
These people,
they kept their foot on our neck.
Because the doctrine of discovery commands that they can't own because the ones who claim to be Jays and are not Jays are claiming the land of the Jays who don't know their Saba. Our people keep thinking everything's over on the other side.
Right.
Now for those of you who are scholars, now you pretty much are, and a lot of you see these books here. This is not even a quarter, not even a fifth of the books that's in this room that they don't see.
Right.
And not even half of the books that you have
all over the house.
And not even a third of the books you gave away, if you get the point. But the deal of it is people need to understand a lot of things that they're familiar with today have their root in the doctrine of discovery. They don't even know that the NAACP is a pawn in the game of the doctrine of discovery. They don't even know that was a Niagara movement that was taken over. That the Niagara movement and rebellion was taken over, and they made it into the NAACP, and interjected the 14th Amendment colored person that has no scientific back up whatsoever. Let me take a moment just to share with people what they don't know that's being promoted among them, even to this day, to show you how again, when you were talking, Dr. G, and you said, let's talk about this, when you called me the other day, right?
Right.
And they took over the Niagara movement and called it NAACP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, go ahead and make a statement. Let me look at this up, and then I'll bring this to the attention of the people. I want them to see what colored actually means.
Oh, the word colored.
Yeah, that they think means African people.
Colorable.
Now, this is color. This is law. And this is what you call connotative linguistics, where people think it means one thing. The same way we were talking earlier, when they think that that the Constantinians are Christians, but they're really Constantinians. All right, here's color, law. By common usage in America. Now, you notice that they specify common usage,
in
which means it's not universal.
Right.
By common usage in America, this term, notice any identity?
Right.
Term. In such phrases as, quote unquote, colored persons, quote unquote, the colored race, quote unquote, colored man, and the like. That means anything that's associated with it, right? Is used to designate Negroes or persons of the African race, including all persons of mixed blood, descended from Negro ancestry. Then it gives you law case for you to research it, because remember, they've done this stuff. Use it in Collins versus Oklahoma State Hospital, 76, Oklahoma 229, 184, etc. And we can go on. Then another case with, Theophanis versus Theophanis, 244, Kentucky, etc. So they're giving you law case. But where the state constitution, notice constitution, provided for separate schools. See, it has a purpose. For the white and colored races, the paradigm, you see, caste paradigm, right? The term, quote unquote, white race was held to be limited to the Caucasian race, and the term colored races to embrace all other races. Then they give you case law, right? Then it says, it has also been held that there is no legal technical signification to the phrase colored person, which the courts are bound judicially to know. Then it gives you law case. This is where they've used the doctrine of discovery to say since these people are not part of the human family, they can't make claim on inheritances. They can't make claims on the land. Therefore, the doctrine of the discovery supersedes their claim. This is how they've been gentrifying our communities. And then our people have been agreeing to be people of color, not knowing it makes them non-human.
And look, and how about minority?
Same minority, same issue, right? And this is a problematic, and even where the problem that we have trying to get our people to read a little bit, and trying to get our people back into reading and understanding why they were burning the books, because they didn't want them to know what the real meanings of these words were and are still. So here we have minor, right? Minor, an infant or person who is under the age of legal competence. One under 21, a term derived from the civil law, which describes a person under a certain age as less than so many years, right? Now, the deal of it is, now let's look at minority. Let me get to minority, right? The state or condition of a minor infancy. So that's a state or condition. The smaller number of votes of a deliberative assembly, right? Opposed to majority, which C, etc. So the people think that minor only means, like a small child. It's a state or condition. It's also your social status. Now let's deal with now that we looked at minor and minority. Now let's look at wardship that the people are held under, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the people are held under wardship, or they call state wards, right? So this is where the profiting comes from the human trafficking that our people don't understand in law when they look at things in court. Now you notice that people of color, the courts have no what? They don't have any obligation to judicially to know or to even recognize them, but yet they call them that. You see,
so that they don't have to.
Exactly. Now, wardship in military tenures, the right of the Lord to have custody as guardian of the body, corpus, and the lands of the infant heir. Body and lands. So, lands of heir of infant
inheritance.
There you go, right? Without any account of profits.
So
now you understand.
That's why you say belligerent trustees.
Exactly.
Or they just look. We're just gonna take it because we're in charge.
Now that's your hegemony. Comes under the doctrine of discovery. They're claiming all inheritance, and you know what land means, right? Not far beyond what people think, right? Until he was 21 or she 16, and Sukaj, the guardian, was accountable for what? Profits. And he was not the Lord, but the nearest relative to whom the inheritance could not descend. Why could it not descend?
Because they don't want you might kill
people of color.
Of that too, but
because what people need to understand is that these classifications were created to steal inheritance, to steal the land.
It's cheap.
It's cheap. That's what it's about. It's the doctrine of discovery in operation.
Cheat right there in the word.
Exactly. So let's deal with this cheat, right? And this, you're doing some study for the people because everybody doesn't have law books, right?
Right.
It's cheat. In feudal law, cheat is an obstruction. So what is an obstruction?
Something is that anything? Something in the way. Something
is that pleasant or is that hostile?
That's hostile.
An obstruction of the course of descent and the consequent determination of the tenure by some unforeseen contingency in which case the land naturally reverts back by a kind of reversion to the original grantor or lord of the fee. So under the doctrine of discovery, they are the lords of London under the lord of feudal law are claiming the land, and this is why the doctrine of discovery has been used consistently in our communities when our people start making claims of what you call gentrification, genocide, gentrification, then burning towns, flooding towns, bombing. It's under what?
And he's reading from
It's under is cheating.
the 4th edition.
Yes.
So somebody wanted to know.
This is
4th edition, yeah.
Now hold on. Let's look at this. And so now we're looking at estate and the estate that they're stealing, right? And the status, right?
Mm-hmm. Do these things back here?
Excuse me. Estate. The interest which anyone has in lands or in any other subject or property, etc. Then you got multiple law cases for reference. An estate in lands, tenements, and hereditaments signifies such interest as the tenant has therein. So hereditaments means all inheritance, both corporal and incorporeal. The doctrine of discovery has been used to override descendancy, and this is what our people have been calling racism and prejudice or redlining. No, it's the doctrine of discovery, but they don't want the people to pay attention to what the real politics are. This is why you'll see these same corporations, right? And the United States Corporation always fund civil rights groups with the corporate operations, or what? Black churches with a 501c3, and the politicians will come when they want the people to vote. Outside of that, they can't talk politics.
That's right. That's what they said.
Well, it's not like they hide it. It's just that our people don't pay attention. Now let's just deal with what people know under the doctrine of discovery with the meetings in Philadelphia, 1854. Right, so 1854, they had the Whittemore Party meetings, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Horace Greeley, etc. Right. So when you do the research on the Whittemore Party, you deal with the Cotton Whigs, which becomes the Democratic Party, and the Conscience Whigs, which becomes the Republican Party. So when our people are talking about politics, or they're talking about Biden, or Bush, or Trump, or anyone, they're talking about Cotton Whigs, Conscience Whigs. Most of them don't know that because they don't read, and of course they're scared of books, and they'll buy $200 sneaks before they'll buy a $100 book. And it's unfortunate. This is why I appreciate what you keep doing, Dr. J. But let's look at free white people, right? And you'll know why they started referring to themselves in 1854, right? And with the Naturalization Act, and even with them altering the Nationalization Act to start listing themselves as white people, right? Now, I'm going to read one paragraph, but look how much it actually tells you if you read between the lines, and if you do research of timeline here, it will reveal a lot. Look here, free white persons, right? Law. Free white persons, quote unquote, referred to in Naturalization Act as amended by Act July the 14th, 1870. The meeting was 1854. The official operations of the alteration of the Naturalization Act, what? Amended 1870, right? Has meaning naturally given to it when first used in one statute 103C3, meaning all persons belonging to the European races then commonly counted as white, and their descendants, including such descendants in other countries to which they have immigrated. Free white persons includes all European Jews, more or less intermixed with peoples of Celtic, Scandinavian, Teutonic, Iberian, Latin, Greek, and Slavic descent. It includes Magyars, Lapps and Finns, and the Basque and Albanians. Free white persons includes the mixed Latin, Celtic, Iberian, and Moorish inhabitants of Spain and Portugal, the mixed Greek, Latin, and Phoenicians, and North African inhabitants of Sicily, and the mixed Slav and Tartar inhabitants of South Russia. Free white persons does not mean Caucasian race, Aryan race, or Indo-European races, nor the mixed Indo-European, Dravidian, Semitic, or Mongolian peoples who inhabit Persia. A Syrian of Asiatic birth and descent will not be entitled to become a naturalized citizen of the United States as being a free white person. So you can see it's a status.
Right.
Now, then you got multiple law case. So people think that the hybrid Europeans that took over here were anciently white people, and actually the Moorish people or the real Phoenician people are the white people. They've reversed history, but it's in law, isn't it? But how many people pay attention to this? Or even what? The modification of the Naturalization Act of July the 14th, 1870. The meeting with the Whigmore Party, Philadelphia, 1854. The introduction of them taking on the noble title of the land because they're stealing the people's land, and they started calling themselves what? White, free white people, and thus black people are slaves. You see how the game is played?
Well, why are
They're
they free?
cast.
Why? I'm thinking in terms of why you would even have to have a designation called free white persons, except they were white persons that weren't so-called white persons that weren't free.
Because people don't know that this is a legal status. They think it's a pedigree.
Okay.
This is the same way they promote a Jew as a race. They promote white as a race, but it's a false concept. It's a status. You know, like when you look at the lessons that Drew Ali presented, he said, why did Europeans call themselves white people? Why? White means what? Rule of the land. Means God, ruler of the land. They're claiming your land under the doctrine of discovery. He said what? They're living off your virtues. Then he said what? He said the European over 3,500 miles from home. He's going to have to take on a lot of water. He's talking about the turnover. He said what? The day's going to come that industry is going to come to a screeching halt. Exactly. When it starts up again, it'll be in favor of the Asiatics. Meaning the restoration, he's talking about the restoration of the lost estate. Now, this is the other interesting thing, Dr. G. When we're talking about the pedigree and the estates of the people of the land, our people think it's a Moorish philosophy. This is law of the world. This is ancient and modern jurisprudence, just like we talked about the last time. And it's interesting how our people, when they talk about trying to solve the problems of our people, they keep reverting to the Carlos Linnaeus mind control paradigm of the race paradigm, as if it's the pedigree. And then they come under the black codes, under the 14th Amendment, as people of color or colored people, which you already saw what it says. It has no legal nor technical significance. It's a caste. And who keeps promoting it as African identity? They don't have to do it anymore. Our people.
We do it. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So they call it consent, don't they?
Yeah.
And then you'll see people who have scholarship that have this information because they're scholars, and they will stay away from it because it will kill their agenda. because the corporation won't give them what you call what? Negro funding to promote 14th Amendment arguments. That's why Martin Luther King said what? It was like I brought my people into a burning house. After they abused him over and over again, he had to rethink his position. Because he was coming from a moral and emotional position and recognize he's dealing with the doctrine of discovery. It ain't these people just because they're your neighbors. This stuff was inculcated from the government body.
Yeah. I want to go back now to the actual some of what was in the announcement.
In context.
Yeah. What was in the announcement of the Pope's repudiation? Because I think, or the Vatican repudiates doctrine of discovery. You can find this. This is from NPR. The fact that you've been talking about the motu proprio and all those things that folks may not have been sure if that really came from or whatever. Now it's in their press because NPR definitely.
It was in their press before.
Right, but it's out in the front by their press.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
NPR is one of their,
one of
their,
And the only reason why it's on NPR is because Trump forced it to be.
Right. So.
That our people keep criticizing.
Well, they claim that this was prompted by the Pope's visit to Canada, where the Inuit children and so forth they had found
that's where
they murdered the children, right? But it says the Vatican on Thursday formally, which would have been, I guess, in March, repudiated the doctrine of discovery. The theory is backed by 15th century papal decrees that legitimize the colonial era seizure of native lands and form the basis of some property laws today. So, we should get back.
Used right to the day.
So we should be able to.
Are they still gentrifying?
Well, but we should, based on this, though, we should be able to go back to.
You have the right, even as you're talking. Okay. You see the issue they had with Lamont. And he was exercising the law.
Right.
That the banks are doing in our name. And all these claims the banks, and what do they really do? He's a political prisoner for doing exactly what they were doing, reversing the doctrine of discovery.
Well, now they've done this.
So it's in force, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Didn't they use that color of law, so-called warrant, to rearrest him when they saw that he was organizing people and teaching constitutional enforcement?
Yeah.
And people from around the world start paying attention to that channel.
Mm-hmm.
And what did they do? They jumped him in the middle of the street, didn't they? There you go.
So, to share some of this, basically it says nearly 500 years after papal decrees were used to rationalize Europe's colonial conquest, the Vatican repudiated those decrees on Thursday, saying the doctrine of discovery that was used to justify snuffing out indigenous people's culture and livelihood is not part of the Catholic faith. That's what they're saying. It was. The doctrine was invoked as a legal and religious standing.
Legal.
Which is not lawful.
Right.
By Europeans who, quote unquote, discovered new lands and violently seized it from people who have been living there for generations. It has been cited in different arenas for centuries, including by the U.S. Supreme Court as early as 1823, and as recently as 2005.
Now, I'm on my phone right now, right, downstairs. Because, as a matter of fact, I was talking to Dee the other day, right? And she asked, were we are going to have, show her the document on the show, right? We'll do that later. But the copy of the letter that they sent in Philadelphia, right? Mm-hmm. Saying that, now remember, 2015, they took her house, right? And you're familiar with that, right? And also, Brother Haran, same thing. So they write her a letter back and say they was wrong, that she's the right claimant to the property. Now it's her issue to get it back. But they sent members of the gangs of New York under fraternal order of the police forced her out of the house. I was there with her
Mm-hmm.
because I stopped them the first time, right? And I was with her, and they came in forced her out of the house. Then they sent her a letter telling her that she's the rightful claimant.
But now somebody else is in
Yeah.
there, and she's got to
But
fight.
what did it? Doctrine of discovery supersede her right of claim. But she had what? House in claim in trust, right? She had a nationality card, right? And the documentation. They acknowledged it and still threw her out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they did, and they've been doing it to a lot of our people. Now, keep in mind, in the late 20s, Drew Ali set up a trust for the Moors to put all their property in. And then you have what? Grand Sheik saying that Drew Ali didn't teach law, saying that Drew Ali didn't teach civics. And the Moors Holy Temple was registered as a civic organization. Listen, I'm just showing you the treason that goes on multiple levels. Now, the religious affidavit, which was adopted in order to protect the people's rights, that was 1928. And you look at the authority on the back, registered, in Cook County, etc. Then they assassinate him on ritually the same day 1 year later. Same day, 1 year later. And then how many people that claim to be governors, so-called representing Noble Ali, say that he never taught civics?
Mm-hmm.
Well, but that's another thing. Then you already know about the congressional records that exposes all that anyway. But the point that I'm saying is our people still, for the most part, don't know that they've been artificially disinherited. They're not really poor. They're under occupation.
Right.
This is why it has been the programming constant to promote the civil rights argument and racism and prejudice, which is a diversion from the issue of genocide activities of a long-going war that has old hundreds of years root that the people didn't know what's going on. Now, because remember when BRICS, what they call BRICS, started having effect on a major scale, right? And Russia started exposing that the congressman here had claim on mortgages here in Deutsche Bank in Germany. This is recent. Why they don't like Putin. But you don't hear them talk about that in mainstream news, do you?
Oh, of course not.
Doctrine of discovery. So now when the nations of the earth, many nations of the earth put out warrant on the Pope and the bishopric, all of a sudden they trying to say, oh, like Pontius Pilate, oh, it's not connected to the church. It came from the church.
Yeah.
And it's been operative, haven't it? Why would they meet currently to refute it if it wasn't in operation, Dr. J?
Yeah, if you can't refute anything that's no longer active, yeah. Sure.
Now, we've been telling people about it since 2013 when he made his first claim. And people were saying, including people who were so-called conscious, were even making videos and saying that we were renegades and that we were not telling the truth. So now the Pope's admitting, again, it's not the first time. That is their stuff, isn't it? Now, instead of telling the people it is the hegemony operations, not white supremacists cover-up, it's the hegemony operations of the doctrine of discovery. The war that never ended. And so long as our people are thinking that it's an attitude, they keep wasting their energy making moral arguments, don't they? Trying to shame them into treating us better. Rather than what? Making reversion of estate. That's why they don't teach law. The argument is reversion of estate. Our people are talking about whether it's trying to convince somebody to like the color of their skin because their leaders are telling them that that's their argument.
And that's not even the case.
It's not. It's a total diversion. It's irrelevant.
It is in some places, like where caste systems are, but you see.
Yeah, but look at what it is. But this is the whole deal. What I'm trying to say to you. The melanin tag is an indicator of Moorish blood. Not because you're dark, it indicates your pedigree. That's where the attack is. See, our people, you notice how people are not thinking? What is one of the most, how do you say, one of the highest selling products every day in your main stores with Europeans? Suntan lotion.
Suntan lotion.
Real and the one that has the color in it. It never been the complexion. The natural melanin indicates you have Moorish blood. Thus, the doctrine of discovery is enforced because it's a signal. Not that they don't like your complexion. That's been a fraud. And so our people have been trained to argue a moral, emotional guilt, shame argument. We got to get them, we got to raise some finance in our little civil rights club to make them respect our color. When the issue is your lost estate. All this other stuff is BS. Irrelevant. It's a diversion.
Yeah.
And then when you show the documents, just like we show the documents, what people who are less than honorable among us would be saying, well, that's that Moorish stuff. It ain't got nothing to do with me. Got everything to do with them. Because once you do the research, it kills the race argument. It's a diversion. No different than if you do the research on the Nicene Council, right? All these people that claim being Christians are really Constantinians, and they've been getting away with it. And these people claiming to be Jews are not Jews. Same argument. And yet it lives strongly today because the people, It's not that is information available, even on, like you can go on your phone. It's available, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Who goes against it? What do you call about the Stockholm Syndrome?
I mean,
you throw these people a life raft of the truth, and they attack you.
Right.
But yet they want the benefit of inheritance, but they refuse to honor their own mothers and fathers. But they want the benefit. But they don't know the relationship, if you get the whole point.
Right, because they believe the lies.
That's the whole.
Well, and the first part I always tell people of belief is be lie. It tells you right there. So many things now are so obviously.
It's obvious.
It's just so.
But look how much energy is spent on what? Trying to convince people to like our color as if they didn't know who we were or are. As if they don't know they're colonists.
Right.
Just because we forgot. And they're claiming to be us and stealing our state and then going to and fro the earth, devouring nations in our name. Mostly, they started off with proxy wars, hide in the background and fund it.
Yeah, they created them. I mean, they've made so many.
They go as peacemakers, and they're the peace breakers. And it's there. It's like there to see. It's not even hidden. And then our people, who keeps looking at these books and claiming holy roly, see it and act like they don't know what they're seeing.
Yeah. So.
But you know what it is.
I wanted to also, and I've brought this up, before this particular book, but I highly recommend. I think it's a third edition. This is the second. Yeah. This is the second edition that they did, which was probably let's see, I don't know when they did. I believe a third one was coming out, so it might be. This was 2016. I think they just came out with an update.
But, and this is.
Let's see.
This is a result.
The author, put your hands over.
This is an extension. Yeah. Of the doctrine of discovery.
Right.
It's this is where they can do the same thing, change the name, and our people think it's different games. Oh, they just started doing this, and guess what? They're hiring 87,000 IRS agents to really come after the people. That's tithing claims under state operations. Because the people ain't paying their tithing. To what? The Lords of London, who answerable to the bishopric and the Pope of Rome under the doctrine of discovery.
Yeah. So yeah, I highly recommend this. And then here's another, since we were talking about how religion has been used for that. I highly recommend this book, which is called the Laughing Jesus. It's religious lies and Gnostic wisdom. As the prophet said, the European was going to start telling us stuff.
And who are the Gnostics? The Gnostics are the Sabian Moors.
Right.
That's what they say. If you're keeping the Sabbath or the Sabbath, you're keeping the wisdom. And this stuff is like I said to you before. This stuff is quite easily available. Is that people's concepts are wrong. The way they look at things are incorrect, and they keep believing those who control the narrative.
Yeah.
And this is why when information comes out, you'll see them to this very day. They'll enforce what? Expurgatorius and prohibitorum. And they'll call it what? Shadow banning, demonetization, censor.
Right.
It's expurgatorius and prohibitorum.
Which is another reason why we created the other alternative channel that we try to get you guys to when we do something we call unfiltered, because every now and then we would like to we'd like to always be able to say exactly what needs to be said, but it's not always.
And what's the foundation of their operations? Doctrine, like you say, doctrine of discovery in force.
It's in force. It's still in force.
It's
still in force.
And people are looking at artificial race and color argument, which was given to them.
Right. They are the ones that, and we saw this in the last 3 years, y'all. They create the problem
and then
come
in
solution. Yeah, and like on white horse with the solution. Same thing is in this book. They go from nation to nation, propositioning the leadership there, how they're going to make this better and that better and rebuild their nation. But if they refuse, then the hitman, they hit them where it hurts.
They can take the point, they can take the payoff or the bullet.
That's right. A lot of them have fought, planes that they've been in have fallen out the sky mysteriously, and all kinds of, they vilified them to us. I mean, just like what somebody's asking me about, how does somebody get how can you say that they're not into the Moorish thing? Black people in Scotland.
Let's put it this way.
Listen, I'm telling them. Listen. I said the last king of Scotland was what? Do you know what? He's a Moor. So if he's the last king of Scotland, then he must.
What are they talking about? That's talking about the overthrow of Iberia.
Absolutely. Sorry, y'all, but there's just so many things that folks don't have their minds open to because of the indoctrination. We've been indoctrinated, especially with religion, because with the
dogma, in the name of religion, just like when we talk about money, we need to say fiat.
Okay.
Indoctrinated in fiat and don't understand what money is and want to argue money.
Yeah.
So. It's like we have to stop promoting falsehood because people are used to it.
Well, we were saying with this, why things have to change. And when I'm thinking in terms of the change, I'm thinking in terms of we're going to have to adapt to when nobody else, very few are taking our fiat these days in other countries outside. You want to travel, you want to go here and there. They may not take your fiat there, or the exchange rate may be so small that you were like, well, I can't even afford.
Read this from the Dungy case. This is the Dungy case. Abraham Lincoln, right? Abraham Lincoln, when he was a lawyer, before he was.
What holiday is it that they're shooting off firecrackers?
All right.
Okay.
Now, read this real quick, Dr. J. Because this is Doctrine of Discovery.
Read all of this real quick.
Yeah, because this is Abraham.
Read all this real quick.
That's the Dungy case.
From here, William Dungy faced losing not only his reputation, but his marriage, his property, and his right to remain in Illinois. Section 10.
Chicago, remember Chicago was main trading place, right?
Yeah. Section 10 of the 1853 Black laws stated that every person who shall have 1/4 Negro blood shall be deemed a mulatto.
Remember, so you talking about doctrine of discovery policy. So keep on reading.
William Dungy retained Abraham Lincoln to squash the possibility that he might be judged a quote unquote Negro and therefore suffer the severe penalties under the 1853 Black Laws Act. Now that's not the book Black, but it was an act.
Yeah.
Okay. Abraham Lincoln filed his declaration charging Joseph Spencer with slander, and I think that was his brother-in-law, right, or somebody.
Yes.
Okay. On April 17th, 1855, and sought $1,000 in damages. A game of legal chess occurred during the first hearing in May. Joseph Spencer's attorneys, Clifton H. Moore and Lawrence Weldon, also Europeans, filed a demurrer to Abraham Lincoln's declaration, declaration asserting that his charges were insufficient in law. Judge, y'all have to excuse me, these whatever's going off is crazy. Judge Davis agreed that 2 of Abraham Lincoln's 3 charges were faulty. The case was continued, and Abraham Lincoln was allowed to amend the declaration at the next term of court, October 1855, before a jury. According to Joseph Spencer's attorney, Lawrence Weldon, Abraham Lincoln's talents as a trial lawyer were evident in his argument for William Dungy. Lawrence Weldon stated that Abraham Lincoln questioned Joseph Spencer's character by demonstrating how Joseph Spencer went from house to house gabbing, quote unquote, gabbing that William Dungy was a quote unquote nigger. Attorney Lawrence Weldon emphasized that Abraham Lincoln's tone and pronunciation had a quote unquote curious touch of ludicrous, which instead of detracting seemed to add to the effect. Abraham Lincoln further undermined Joseph Spencer by using humor to persuade the jury that there was reasonable doubt regarding William Dungy's race. The attorney, Lawrence Weldon, recalled Abraham Lincoln's statement, "My client is not a Negro. Though it is a crime to be a Negro, no crime to be born with a black skin. But my client is not a Negro. His skin may not be as white as ours, but I say he is not a Negro, though he may be a Moor." And that has an E on the end of it. That's what Abraham Lincoln said.
That was one of the lawyers, keeping in mind, he was making mockery.
Right. Yeah. He said a Moor, M-O-O-R-E. Mr. Lincoln, interrupted Judge Davis, scarcely able to retain a smile. "You mean a Moor, M-O-O-R, of his, Moor, M-O-O-R, not Moor, M-O-O-R-E.
Mr. Clifton, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Your Honor, comma, Moore, M-O-O-R, not Clifton H. Moore, M-O-O-R-E, replied Mr. Lincoln with a sweep of his long arm toward the table where Moore and I sat. "I say my client may be a Moor, but he is not a Negro." That was Abraham Lincoln.
Now, so this put in time context, right? So what was the argument? If you were called a Negro or black, it was slander, because the pedigree is Moor. That's what the case is based on. That's 1853, even before what? Even before the Dred Scott case. This is not a new argument with no Drali. Our people need to know this. It's in law. And they keep thinking it's a term, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
They keep thinking it's a philosophy, don't they? It's pedigree. Because without it, you have no right of estate. That's why they created the nom de guerres. He lost his estate, his wife, everything. And they've been doing it, what? It's not a secret. This is just an example. This is law case. Now, and how many scholars will sit around and start talking racism rather than talk his pedigree and estate, right of estate? And that under the black code, you agree to be black and Negro, you have no right of estate. As a matter of fact, it's a crime.
Someone asked the question, what is a Melungian?
A Melungian?
A Melungian. Do you know?
I'm not aware immediately.
Okay.
Yeah.
We sorry, we don't know. See,
Melungeon.
we don't know everything. No, he doesn't. He does. He knows most things. I don't. I don't know it. I don't know. I don't know that I've heard that before. Everything. Oh, Melungeon people.
The
Appalachian.
Melungeon. Oh, you're talking about the hills.
Yeah.
They're simply talking about some of the
It says
Powhatan tribes.
people of mixed ethnic ancestry who, before the end of the 18th century, were discovered living in limited areas of what is now the southeastern
Yeah.
United States, notably in the
They're
Appalachian
the
Mountains.
Powhatanis. Oh, I know now.
Okay, they're mixed race. Oh, so the people in Appalachia were mixed race. I wasn't sure that.
They would. That was a term created dealing with a lot of people that they would also refer to as mulattoes, but were more on the Asiatic side.
Hmm. Wow.
And keeping a lot of these were middle 1800 terms that were created. They're not real pedigrees.
Yeah, and you know that, like, again, I had a conversation with an old friend today, and it just had to be. It was, and we talked about a little bit on the way here about the so-called black nobility,
Yeah.
and who was really, that it had to be a monumental conspiracy to pull the wool over the eyes of the world. If the people, like Rod says, Chief Pontiac says, that they look like us, but they're not us, and that they are basically, the behind the scenes, they are the ones that are in control of a lot of things, and that the Caucasians or modern Europeans are being used as frontmen, so to speak, for something higher and more melanated that might be in control. What do you feel with regard to that?
Well, in some cases that was the case, but that's not the general case. The general case is the hegemony of what you call the hybrid takeover. It's an actual takeover.
So there was a trading places like
it's an actual takeover.
Okay.
I think what happens is when you talk about people like Anthony Johnson and stuff like that, who were some of the
largest slave owner.
Yeah, as an example.
Right.
And they look at that, but that was a small compared to what was going on. And it's sort of like a lot of times, like the hybrid Europeans would use that as an excuse to minimize their guilt. Or even like they use all over the place, look what your people did to you, therefore what we did is all right.
Wow.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you see, like when we're looking at what was on TV earlier, the murder of Emmett Till and the burnings.
Well, it was looking for the young man that had been
and you see the whole crowd which
killed in the high school, wrapped up in the mat.
Yeah,
that was horrible.
And you'll see, you don't see
Jermaine
no
Spencer.
Asiatics in the background really telling them to do any daggone thing. That's their hegemony operations. The fact that some of our people sold, which they do even today, sell each other out. That's on a small scale. That's almost like a what you call they use that as a justification. So you don't really see our people really controlling the banks and stuff like that.
Even in some of these other more remote areas like in Switzerland and
what you see them selling out, but that's because they're under threat. You don't see them selling out like they got some authority. No.
So the so-called black pope, is that just a term of
that's
his
a term
deeds,
of takeover,
not his
no, that has nothing to do.
Race,
remember, that's why we go to the Naturalization Act. This term wasn't even used among the people into the early into the mid 1800s.
Well, people used to. Some older folks say you want to fight if they called you black.
Yeah, exactly, because they knew the Dungy cases. It shows you the state of mind, timeline in context. Today they would talking about they're proud.
Right, but see, we've had that period. If you go back to like the I don't know when it started, but when you have the area when they destroyed or took over Seneca Village and
Yeah,
created
same thing.
Central Park, took off,
Same
put
thing.
the all of the indigenous either killed them, put them in prison or put them in insane asylums, then took the
Exactly.
babies, the children,
And put them in what you call
orphan
orphanages and what they call Christian homes.
and indoctrinated them with the lot. Now they believe. Now they don't know what their own
Exactly.
chronology is, and now they're
Exactly.
carrying on this lie that they were given.
Exactly.
And that's how we had to break.
No different. They'll be writing in history. It probably won't happen because of the way the world's going right now. But they will be writing in history, if they could get away with it, right? That the law cases that are in world court right now with human DNA in the hot dogs, bologna, and hamburger, right? And the over 70 million since they introduced the so-called rights to the body thing, of over 70 million child sacrifices in the name of abortion, which was really to fund the organ transplant business, the stem cell and cloning operations, and to the carcasses being also cosmetic, adrenochrome, and with the leftovers for glue factories with the bones, and rest of it introduced into all of a sudden 1942 a bunch of burger businesses all jump up out of nowhere. So in the future they'll be saying that the quote unquote black women willingly through the birth certificate under escheat or under wardship tenure, wards of the state, donated their children to the corporate state, and so therefore they were not viable, therefore they were not human, therefore they were a raw product sanctioned by the women for them to do whatever they did. Therefore, that's part of the argument in world court about the human DNA, that they were considered not viable and thus expendable by the will of the women. So they're really doing what? Implicating that women agreed to the sacrifice of their children, but that's not the way this stuff is promoted in public, is it? Yeah. It's promoted in public that women have right to their bodies, and therefore they're not talking about the organ industry, are they?
No.
Organ transplant. They're not talking about stem cell operations, are they?
The women, no.
They're not talking about adrenochrome, are they?
No.
They're not talking about the human DNA in hot dogs and in bologna. For those of you listening right now, just as an interjection with this doctrine of discovery, just go on your phones right now while we're talking and look up Rabbi Finkelstein, and then look at World Court and look at all of your burgers and hot dogs, and they'll admit to 2 to 5% being human DNA in all of them, and yet that's not made public. But yet, you don't see all these funerals, do you? Going on for 70 million children, do you? And that's a number they admit to. It's not the real number. That's a number they admit to.
But we don't get named for this one.
So when they talk about people look like you sacrificing, you better look at yourself in the mirror, because it goes deeper than people would want to admit to. But at the same time, some people are tricked into it under the guise of something that it's really not. Almost most things that are done for the genocide operations is done in some kind of phrase or some kind of program that presents what it is really not, but yet the outcome tells you what it actually is. And our people got so used to things presented as one thing and being another, they use what you call selective complaints. That the politicians are saying one thing and doing another. The preachers are saying one thing and doing another, as if you didn't know that that's the pattern. And as if they have not participated in that fraud. Go ahead.
Well, we are at the end of this session. And did you enjoy your vacation?
Yes, I had a good rest.
Well, you needed that. You needed that. So, yeah. So we missed you. Yeah, you were missed.
Miss
But
you all too.
yeah, we missed you. But Friday, y'all. This coming Friday for anybody, everybody that is within driving
Your
distance
territory.
to this particular not driving whatever traveling distance to where we are. We want you to come out on Friday the 26th. And here we go. Where we go. In-person civics classes are
Yeah,
back
we're going to have a live civic
at
class.
House of Reawakening Minds every fourth Friday. It started last month. It was raining cats and dogs, but we are very grateful for those who ventured out even as far as from Chicago and
Yes.
New York, and I think Rhode Island.
California.
Well, no, I don't think we had
Yeah.
California this time. Not last Friday, not Friday before last.
Yeah.
Yeah, but who came out? We appreciate you. But come on out next Friday, the 26th. The doors will open at 6:30. It's from 7 to probably approximately 9:30, and Grand Sheik and I would really love to see you and to meet you in person, like we were able to meet some of the ones. Yeah, we used to do this on a regular. It used to be first it was once a month, and then we got to
before the bio war attack,
and then we were twice a month, and then that gave rise to our live stream, which actually has really been awesome because we've been able to.
They try to shut it down, it actually spread.
Yeah, so we've been able to expand what we're doing by speaking to you all over the globe. So definitely want you to come out for that. We also we have our what's happening on our next gathering. Our one in March was awesome. We call this the Soulful Summer Gathering and Strategic Planning Retreat. A lot of you all are asking, what can we do? What can we do moving forward? Well, in this particular session, we are actually going to have breakout groups and for strategic planning, because it's time for us to put pen to paper, start strategizing and seeing, collecting our data about who we are, what are we working with, and so forth, and what can we do on a collective basis, what options we have. So that's a part of it. So I'm missing Brother Truth Ali on here because he agreed to be one of our presenters. But anyway, we would love for you to come out and be part of this. And right now the tickets are $75.
Make sure that you get Truth on there.
Right. $75 for the 3 days. But we have a special until June 30th, which means you can get 2 tickets for $120, right, Sheik? Which means they're saving 30 notes. So if you want to get go on the website, on our website, we actually have the link for this, and so we want you to avail yourself of it. And last but not least, we don't have a picture of it, but we're excited about our our more B&B that we were working on. And so we mentioned it to you probably a week before last. I think I mentioned it. I may have mentioned it Tuesday that we're trying to furnish it. So if we can, it's in rather good shape. We just have a few things to do, but we also need to furnish it. So if you want to help us by sending us, $2, $1, we don't really care. If you send it, we'll use it towards what we need to do. And we wanted to, so that when you all come in town, although we can't house everybody, we'll be able to house some, and in this situation. So you always been so kind to help us, and we do appreciate you. It's for a good cause. I'm going to run this out under again, just so you know, if you want to send support, and you can literally do it either via PayPal, or you could do it through Cash App. But make sure, if you do it through Cash App, if you don't see Naila Gilliam come up when you say $Reawaken, if my name Naila Gilliam does not come up, please, it's not me. There's been 2 or 3 different Grand Sheik people who have literally created. One of them created a Cash App, and they used my name, and they used our logo and all of that stuff, and it's not us. So if when I say my name, this is the one. I want to pull this up. This right here somebody created this. They use Dr. G. Look,
Mhm.
this
Yeah.
this is not us. Please do not support this. They used our logo
Yeah.
and they put Dr. G and House, but it should say this right here, Naila Gilliam. So when you do $ reawaken, you need to see my name, and probably a picture of me or something pops up. But again, if you support us, we'll be able to have that, get that finished
Yes.
before our July event, and we're excited about that. So again, we would love to see you this Friday, and we have five Fridays this month. So
Oh
I don't,
yeah. So
or is it next month? There's 5 Fridays.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not. Maybe
But
it's
we'll
next
make-
month. We'll figure it
Either
out.
way, we'll make up for lost time too.
Yeah, we appreciate you, but we really and I'm gonna share this. I'm so excited. So we went. You remember we went out in the backyard.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Herbs.
yeah. We went in the backyard, and I wanted to complain to Grand Sheik that we needed to get a weed whacker or I always want to say a vacuum cleaner, a lawnmower
Yeah.
to cut all these doggone, at the time, weeds out of the back, and come to find out that there's very little in the way of I think that the tree of heaven is probably the only weed we have back there, which is everything else. I mean, it's just so amazing.
Yeah.
It we've got
Healing herbs.
healing herbs. We have a virtual, a literal apothecary. And the last thing that I thought, well, we really need to get rid of those things that have covered the ground. And I found out that Dr. Be Serious was talking about them. And then I went to look them up. And I was like, why didn't I know this? We just put out an herbal book. But cleavers are so good for the lymphatic system. And they're diuretic. They help you weight. We've got mugwort. That's good tea. We've got red clover. We've got mint. We've got wheat back there.
Yes.
And so we've got so much stuff growing back there. And I'm going to be looking for some volunteers to help me harvest back there, because it's a lot of stuff going on back there. So if you are close and
know some stuff
and want to come on a weekend to help harvest some stuff out back there, fine. However, after the 8th, I have surgery on the 8th, so I'll probably be out of commission for a little bit, y'all. But I'm trying to do some things before June 8th. And thank you. Last but not least, thank you for those who were listening on Tuesday when I announced that my son was ill in the hospital. He came home today. You got the chance to see him today. And we're so happy for your prayers and your positive energy, because he was in there from Tuesday until today. And he said he feel like he wants to run around the block, and he could anybody with a hemoglobin level of 3, they said that's what people have when they've been shot or stabbed and they bleed out. So I'm so grateful that and he wasn't shot or stabbed, but he was walking. He was like the Walking Dead, literally. He was almost dead. And so we're grateful. I think that's it, right?
Yes.
And okay, y'all, we appreciate you, and we appreciate those of you who've stayed on.
And those of you who have Ancient and Modern Jurisprudence, Henry Campbell Black Law Dictionary, 4th edition or 3rd, etc., look up land, print it out, study it, and share it with your friends, because their concepts are wrong when they're thinking about, when they're told in history that our land has been colonized, because it means more than what you think it means.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, because land is more conclusive.
It's far more
inclusive.
Once you read it, your concepts about a lot of things will change.
Right. And I would highly recommend to get an app called Picture This. It's in the Play Store, and because I'm a Galaxy girl, it's probably in your Apple Store. Picture This. That app is amazing app for identifying plants that you might think are weeds.
Yes.
You just point your phone at the plant, and it'll tell you exactly what it is. And then you can delve into what it does. So it doesn't always tell you all of the healthy benefits, but once you get the name of it, now you can look it up and see research and see what that might be. And most of the time, whatever it is you need is growing.
And keep in mind, the people were trained that these things were weed because they didn't want them to know that nature provides for them all around them.
Absolutely.
Within a 300-mile radius, always does.
So I'm just encouraging people to check before you label it a weed. It just may be your medicine.
More often than not, too.
Yeah. It may just be your
Medicine or food.
Right. So hope to see y'all that we can see next Friday here. We're going to figure out how to record it, but it's like, patting your head and rubbing your belly. We just need a little bit more help to do all those other technical things.
Yes.
So, but we'll get it together, y'all. You have that app. Yep. It's I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So
excellent.
Yep. So a traveling hobo know that on nature. Okay. All right. So we are going, and we appreciate you. And I don't know what's wrong with the sound, y'all. Something happened with the speaker, and I put a brand new whatever this speaker on here, a new one, and we still can't get our old sound. So I don't know what's going on. We have to figure it out, or I need some technical assistance.
With your technical
skills and abilities. Yeah. But so that's why the sound is so kind of like bleh. But we're gonna nonetheless
we'll fix it.
You're so welcome. We're so welcome. We appreciate having the opportunity to dispense information to you. That's why we're here. That's why we're here. So So what am I gonna do next? Okay. We're gonna leave. How about that? And I'm gonna play this music.
The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say I'm reawakening mine. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say I'm reawakening mine.